Okay, everyone, thank you very much for coming to the panel. My name is Anix. So here. There we go. I am a member of the Vilous team. So my main role with the team is the Japanese to English proofreading with the manga. So I'm also kind of the manga editor. I help out with the official wiki. I'm also a community leader in a few of the chat communities on Telegram. To my left here is Biki. He's also a Vilous team member, and he's been with Vilous and been following Sergals for a long, long time. So he's kind of the Vilous historian in my eyes. So if you need any of the ye old questions, he's the one to ask. So I'm going to start off by talking about the origins of Sergals and Vilous. So meet the artists. These are the two people that are responsible for Sergals as we know it, as well as Vilous and everything in the world. So we've got Mick39. She is the species creator. She is the one that created Sergals to begin with. Both of these people live over in Japan. So yeah, Mick39 is the one that created Sergals, and one of her best friends is Kiki Uma. Kiki is responsible more for the story and world building. So Vilous is a collaborative effort between these two people. So these are the people that bring us Vilous as we know it. And there's been other people that have helped out along the way, but these are the two core people responsible for this. So here's a brief history of Vilous. So way back in 2003, Mick39 created the first Sergals in Japan. Hello, lights. Is someone bump the light switch?
Who needs lights?
And now I'm blind. Too much work going on here. Okay. So she created them way back in 2003 as kind of a personal project. So that is a very, very old version of Sergals. So you can see they have this very sci-fi feel to them, especially back then. So in 2006, that's when Sergals became popular in the West, thanks to 4chan and Second Life. A lot of people here have seen Second Life avatars of Sergals. 2006 is when they became really popular, and that's when we started catching on to this whole Sergal thing. So in more recent times, 2015, the Vilous team was formed, especially to help out the Japanese artists to kind of build the brand, build the manga, and get everything kind of going. So that was formed. We now have a website, an online store, a manga, and everything. This is all thanks to the effort of the Vilous team, which is an international team. We've got people in Russia, Korea, and America, so we're all over the place. And yes, there is a manga going on right now. It is active, it is free, it is online, and I can show it to you later. So we're most of us here to learn more about Sergals, so let's jump right into the meat of it. So what is a Sergal? A Sergal is a fictional bipedal humanoid race of people that live in the sci-fi world of Vilous. They live on a planet known as Planet Tal, and they are a member of a race of people known as the Eltis race, and I'll introduce them more in a little bit. They are mammal-like, so they are covered with fur, but they are not actually mammals like you would see on Earth, so there are some anatomical differences between us and them. Sergals themselves are inspired by animals, including sharks, and that's the obvious is the head structure is very shark-like, but the rest of the body is reminiscent of rabbits, kangaroos. You can definitely see the canine feel to it, but also reptiles, avians, dinosaurs, particularly velociraptors. You can kind of see that in the body shape and the tail. But that's what they were inspired by, so I'm going to talk a little bit more about the anatomy. Now you all, or most of you, should have the anatomy chart right now. So unlike a lot of anthropomorphic animal people that we're used to seeing, these were meant to be more designed to be kind of a sci-fi race. So there was a lot of care and thought that went into the body of them and how they would survive on the planet they live on. The planet they live on is very hostile, and they were literally biologically engineered to survive on this hostile planet. It's got a lot of solar radiation, it's a very arid planet, it's very hostile, full of a lot of dangerous creatures. So their bodies have been engineered to handle a situation like that. For instance, they have a healing factor that's much better than what we have as humans. So you can kind of think of like James Cameron's Avatar. The Na'vi people were very robust. Sergals are very similar to that. Although Sergals are very similar in height to us, they range between right around 6 foot is about the average height. Depending on the sub-race, it can range between a little under 6 foot to about 6'8". So they don't tower over us, they're about the same height as us. Other aspects of their anatomy that I want to point out is that they have ears that are swept backwards. So unlike a cat or a fox, they do face backwards, and normally the ear holes are not visible except from the back. And the entire head shape, if you notice this right here, looks very similar to that of a fighter aircraft. That's not a coincidence. Mick herself was inspired by fighter jets, especially she's a big gamer. She loved the game Ace Combat. In fact, her nickname Mick came from the Ace Combat video game series, but that's why they look very fighter jet-like. So it's kind of an amalgamation of all these things that she loves and holds dear, and we get to enjoy as well. So one of the other things that's kind of interesting about them is that she decided to have a very bird-like anatomy to them. So right here in the front there is a breastbone here known as a keel, and that is derived from birds on Earth. They have this breastbone that allowed the muscles attached to it, and that was added to Sergals as well. And their main trait is to do a lot of running and jumping to move across the dangerous wilderness as fast as possible. So their legs and their feet are very kangaroo-like to do a lot of running and jumping, bounding, leaping over obstacles. And that's the main gist of their anatomy, so I'm going to move on. So there are 4 main varieties of Sergals. There's a lot of, because of hybrids and everything, there's definitely a lot of gradients between these, but these are the 4 main sub-races of Sergals. So on the far left here we have the Northern, or as I like to call them, the classics. So they have mostly gray fur, so white and gray fur is their main coloration. They're kind of the average size. The Western ones are what I call the pretty ones. They come in greens, blues, purples, and they come from a very festive environment. That's what their culture is based around. The Eastern ones are the ones from the East. They have what is known as hybrid vigor. They are the stronger, the taller of the two, so they are a hybrid of the Northerns and the Southerns, and they live in the East. They're mostly known as being hunters and warriors, so they are usually the tougher ones of them all. Finally is the ones in the South. I call them the cultured because they actually founded a very prosperous city in the middle of the desert on a giant salt lake. So they are shorter than the other ones, but they also made up for that by having a better civilization. Now as time went on, the North also got a large city as well, but the Southern ones are the ones that did a lot more of the cultured stuff. So a little bit about their typical nature. Now Sergals are people. They're just humans like us, so they can have their own dreams and aspirations. A Sergal can do about anything that we can do. However, compared to the other 2 Eltis races, which I'll introduce in a moment, they have definitely some typical natures to them. Sergals are actually fairly friendly. They're very casual. They're very easygoing. They view society as such. So they're very laid back and happy people. They're very hardworking. They do a very good job as laborers, farmers. They take up soldier positions, police forces. So they're very hardworking individuals. They tend to be a bit simple-minded. They're not stupid by any means, but they are not necessarily the engineers of the groups. That's usually left for the other races. So they have kind of a naive yet optimistic aspect to them, and that comes with the benefit that they don't hold grudges. They're not typically warlike. There is some history to them that is definitely centered around wars, but generally their nature is they don't hold a lot of grudges, but they are also influenced by their environment, and that's why we have the 4 main groups right here. They do have their 4 cultures, and they're also influenced by strong leaders. So let's talk about the other Eltis races. There are actually 3 in all. It's a triad of races. So we've got the bird-like Nevrians, the goat-like Agudners, and then of course the Sergals. So here's how they stack up on height. This is pretty much the scale. The Nevrians are smaller in build than the others. So I'll talk about the other 2 for a moment. So Nevrians are somewhat feminine in build. They do follow similar traits to birds on Earth. If anyone here is familiar with the cardinal bird, it's those res birds. The males are very pretty, kind of like also like peacocks. So here is a male. They typically come in very vivid colors, very bright and colorful. They have a reverse gender system, so the males are very effeminate, they're very ladylike, and that's just how the culture is. Whereas the females have a lot more muted, more earth tones to them. and they tend to be the more masculine of the two. They are the guardians, the protectors of the household. They typically are more the hunters. So they do have a reverse gender norm there. The males do have a wing system, which does allow them to have limited flight capabilities. So you can see that right here with the male wings. Whereas the females have much shorter feather structures, which makes them a lot more velociraptor-like. You can see the foot structure right here. We have more of a velociraptor-style talon claw system, whereas the males have a much more daintier physiology. So Agunders are actually a very wide variety to them. I say they're like the goat people, but there's actually a lot more to them than that. They come in a bunch of different sub-races. They range between, some of them are bulldog-like, some are bear-like, some are even kind of more dog-like. So it all depends. The other varieties of them are still kind of coming out. So most of the people have only seen the goat-like Agunders. But overall, Agunders are very human-like peoples. Those familiar with sci-fi games and fantasy worlds, typically you always see like the human race that is kind of best of, jack of all trades, master of none. The Agunders are kind of like that. They're kind of on the average scale. What's really good about them is that they're very good at surviving. They typically take up engineering roles. They're usually the inventors of the group. They're also the strongest of the groups. So Sergals are more about running and being swift and fast. And Agunders can do a lot of the more muscly things. So they are ungulate styles. They do have hooked feet. You can see their hands look kind of like this right here. But they, as far as like the gender norms, they take up a lot more of a human role. They're also much more like mammals. They do have breasts, unlike Sergals and Nebrians. So they are very, as you can see right here, the female does have that. So that's the Agunders. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about the world that they live in. So this is kind of a sci-fi world, and I'm going to touch on that for a moment. If anyone has seen any of the Studio Ghibli movies, for example, Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind, Vilous is very much inspired by movies like that, especially Nausicaa. So you're going to see a lot of themes from those, and it is a very Japanese-style world. So it is steeped in a lot of Japanese mythology and folklore. You're going to see a lot of that where there's going to be, it's kind of like a iceberg, where you're going to see the tip of it is what you see in the manga and see on the wiki, but there's actually a lot of deeper things going on in the world that you're probably not going to see for a while. There's still stuff that's going to be coming out later, and some stuff may never be revealed at all, but it's all going on behind the scenes. So there is a lot of complexity and depth that goes into this world. So here is the Vilous system, the star system. Vilous is actually the name of the star. The sun itself is Vilous, and there are 3 main planets in the system. We have Eltis right here, which is where the Eltis races originally came from. The history, in short, is that Eltis is a very Earth-like planet. It's had oceans and all the other things that we have on Earth. But the people there, something happened that devastated the planet, and they had to evacuate from Eltis to Tal. And that's why all the Eltis races are here on Tal now. Tal is like if we went from Earth to Mars or Earth to Venus. Tal is a much more inhospitable planet that really wasn't meant for the Eltis people to live on. So to be able to live there, they had these new bodies engineered to live on that planet. However, something happened during the transition from Eltis to Tal. If it was actually lost to history, if there was, say, an Ark spaceship, maybe it crashed, it's actually unknown to the people how they got there. They just know that they're different than the other animals around them. But that's how they got to Tal, and that's why they're known as the Eltis races. So the planet of Tal right here, most of the Eltis live in this tiny little spot right here. It'd be like what if all of the people on Earth lived in Europe. They live all in this layer right here, because they haven't expanded out from there because the planet is very treacherous. This yellow area right here is actually a very hazardous area. It's just kind of known as the dangerous climate. The radiation from the sun is so strong here that the Eltis people literally cannot traverse across it. So that kind of leaves them stuck right here in this area for right now. So that area that you saw right here, I'm going to zoom in on that. So the area that they live in is like this. Now you saw the 4 different groups. In the north, that's where they started out, is up here, and this is where the north area is. It's also known as the Shigu clan. To the west is this little area right here. The western Sergals came from this area right here. The Nevrians live in the Nevrian Mountains, or Nevria is this area right here. To the east is the Riono clan, and that's where most of the hunters come from. So there is a mountain range that's right here. In the middle of it all, there's a giant unending desert known as the Sergals Desert. Down here, this is where most of the prosperous society lives. There is a salt lake known as Salt Lake Vilous, and Gold Ring is a city that's right around here on the top. Doesn't go quite all the way around the entire lake, but that is where it is based out of, right here. So a little bit more about the Altus zones. I've got some pictures to show about that. So in the west, it is a very kind of almost Native American kind of place. Unfortunately, in the present day, that was invaded and taken over and decimated, so this area doesn't exist anymore in present day. But to the north, we have the Shigu area, and I kind of liken that almost like, it's a very industrial place, at least in present day, so it's kind of like into Russia a little bit, very industrial people. To the east is the Riono. This is their area right here. Mostly they have a lot of plains and open areas there. And in the south is the desert area, and that's where Gold Ring is, and that's where like a lot of the stories actually happen and come from. Now the rest of the planet and the rest of the areas that aren't civilized are known as the Tilixian biomes. So the people that live there, the Altus races, call this area the alien biomes or the alien areas. That's kind of like, for those that have seen Nausicaa, that's where the bugs live in a way, so I'm kind of relating to that right there. So there's a lot of forests, there's a lot of plains. Here's the Sergals Desert. The forests in particular are very dangerous, and that's where a lot of the dangerous creatures live. And a lot of them are incredibly deadly. They have toxins, they have venoms, they can actually eat someone whole. So here's an example of a lot of the creatures that live here on Tal. So again, almost everything here, in fact everything on this list right here, is all native to Tal. So all these are considered alien creatures to the Altus peoples. Now this is definitely not to scale. Now a lot of them are kind of related to creatures on Earth. So they have things that we call goats, horses, they have wolves and dogs. So the wolves here are the wild ones. They actually have domesticated dogs, and they're kind of used as companions or pack animals. There's also other wild creatures such as the weasels. These are rather large creatures. You can see one right here. These are stingers on them. They can paralyze you for pretty much a full day. So these are not to be trifled with. They also have little cute things like piglets that they do raise and domesticate for food. And they got these little guys right here known as hamsters, or as we like to call, potatoes with legs. So a lot of people, they have actually had their characters adopt these as little pets, and they are freaking cute. Another Tilixian creature right here is known as stalkers. Now these are kind of interesting because they range from either being completely wild and primal, or the ones that choose to live amongst people. They actually have a high level of intelligence in them. And some of them can actually choose to live with and among the people. They can learn to adopt speech. Those that really go above and beyond the other stalkers will actually, and I'll move on to the next one, is the Tilixian races. They actually can wear clothing, they can be given human rights, they can own property, start a business, be an employee, make money. But again, this is kind of the upper echelon of stalkers that choose to live with and among people. Some of them prefer just to be a pet or a companion and never talk. Some of them prefer just to roam the wilds. It all depends. So some people actually do have stalker characters they love and have. The other one is the Rooters. These are a very enigmatic and mysterious race of people. They're indigenous to this planet. They're kind of robotic humanoids. They're not actually robots, but they are very odd looking to us. They are known to the people, the Altus peoples. They do live in a society. They kind of take on an advisory role. So they do have a council, they do advise the Altus peoples, but they also tend to kind of keep out of the actual politics, It's kind of like in Star Trek where they have the Prime Directive. They kind of step away and say, you guys do your thing, and they mostly observe and give advice from time to time. But they are they're a hyper-intelligent and race of people, so they do have their own level of technology, but they kind of keep that to themselves. So yeah, there's not a lot known about them. They're a very mysterious race, which also leads to a lot of controversies, or conspiracies rather, that people like to think up about them. Now, Vilous is not just a world. There actually is stories or are characters that have filled this world. Mick and Kiki have actually created, in particular, 3 chapters. Some of you may have heard of them: the red chapter, the green chapter, and the blue chapter. The red chapter has been translated to English. The other 2 are Japanese only, but you can use like Google Translate to read them. They are an older version of the story, so they are a little out of date. The story is being kind of, I wouldn't say retconned, but being rewritten. It's currently being written and developed and released as a manga form. That's actually going on right now. We release the manga pages twice a day, so if you want to get up with it, you'll be able to catch up pretty quickly. Twice a week, sorry. We're not that crazy. But yeah, we have a variety of characters on here. Rain is probably the most important or pivotal character because she did lead a lot of change in the way the society works. She was kind of a Genghis Khan kind of character, or Alexander the Great, where she did lead a conquest that led to a lot of change in technology, the way that the people came together. So she did do a lot of good and a lot of bad. Her character is very interesting. There's also a few other auxiliary characters like Baku and Get have their own story in one of the manga chapters. Jack is another character that'll be coming up eventually, and Kat and Lyric are a couple people that are under Rain right here, and they have their own adventures. There are also a lot of fans that create their own characters, their own stories. Some people have even written novels about their character. Priley right here is actually a fan character. He's also on the Vilous team, and his character is a Nevrian and is featured in quite a lot of really high quality art. So Priley's been around for quite some time. Is usually seen showing as a vendor, selling items, and traveling the world. And yeah, so there's a lot of fan input. And all these races are open races, so if anyone here wants to make a Vilous character, you are more than welcome to. We can definitely advise you on how to do that, or other fans can help you out with that and give you ideas on how your character can live in this world. But yeah, just have a lot of fun with that. And in fact, a lot of people have also created Sergal hybrids, or say, I want my Sergal to live, say, on Earth. And we're totally cool with that. If you want to have like a Sergal hybrid or anything, that's totally fine. Like, have fun with this. This is like everything. This is a fandom, so we want you guys to have fun with your characters and tell us your stories and everything. We'd love to hear about them. But that's the main part of this presentation. So if you'd like to learn more, the wiki is a great place to learn more about Sergals. I just scratched the surface. We have a full wiki with a lot of information about them. I can show that in just a second. We also have the manga, which has 3 chapters right now, and there's only maybe 100 or so pages in all, so if you want to get through that, you can get through that pretty quickly. For those on Telegram, we also have an official Telegram war room, which you can come and ask any questions you want, hang out with us. And you can talk directly to Vilous staff. We're all on Telegram. You can come and talk to us whenever you want. So if you have any other questions you want to ask, like later on, you can totally do that. So right here is the Vilous website. So the manga is there. It is complete. Right now it is fully free for you to go view. So if you want to go check it out, the website is on the pamphlet that I handed out. Just go up here to Comics and Artworks and start with Gathering Herbs. That is what you'll see when you first go there is the latest page, like a lot of webcomics will do that. So make sure to go up here to Gathering Herbs to start out. So it'll give you a very good taste of what the world is like, and it's, well, you'll find out. It's very interesting what happens in that little chapter. It's just kind of a prologue. You can also learn about us, learn about the team. We do have an official store, and the wiki is right here. And probably the first thing you might want to check out, the most popular wiki page is the one on Sergals. When I say there's a lot of information, I mean there is a lot of information. With artwork and everything, there's a lot of information about the cities, about the different races, the different creatures. So yeah, the wiki is pretty in-depth, so you can spend a lot of time there if you want to. Just depends on how much you want to dive into this. But yeah, that's the main thing for my presentation. I would like to open up to any questions, any thoughts anyone would like to have, or if you'd like to add anything else to the conversation.
Just one thing, you mentioned present day earlier.
Yeah.
So Vilous is a setting that takes place over a long time. You know, there's a lot of stories along a timeline. When he's talking about present day, he's talking about year 100 on the calendar. Is
Yeah.
They can consider present day.
Yeah.
So that's after, you know, Rain's conquest, after you know, everything happens with her children, all the other adventures and stuff like that. So yeah, I just wanted to touch on that real quick.
And yeah, that timeline's actually in the wiki as well. So a lot of people prefer to stay in the modern times. And one thing we get a lot of questions on is what's the technology level of this world? The technology level, it's kind of its own thing, but I would say we kind of call it steampunk. So it's kind of like 1920s, 1930s Earth. So
the important thing with the technology that Rick and Kiki was talking about is that they should always be just a little bit weird.
yeah.
So, like one of the pictures I like is they have a portable fax machine.
Yeah.
They don't have a phone, they have a portable fax machine.
But yeah, the technology, now again, this is an alien world, so they develop their technology different from what we have in order to circumvent the land that they live in. For example, in the north, they live in little tiny villages. It almost feels like an Inuit or Native American tribal system. And that kind of changed when Rain came along and unified the nation into an actual nation. But before then, they didn't have a lot of technology. So in modern day, in the year 100, they do have things like cars, they do have guns, although they don't, it's not really a gun-happy place because it's more like Japan, they don't use a lot of guns there. But yeah, they do have cars, they do have guns, they do have wireless fax machines, they do have electronics, so it's just it's kind of a mishmash. But yeah, if you think of like, say, Full Metal Alchemist or any of the Studio Ghibli movies, you kind of get an idea of how it's a very Japanese kind of alt-world feel to things. We had a question over here?
Yeah, that's all right.
Sure.
So and sorry if this was already hashed out, they
Yeah.
used to be people, more like us.
Yes.
And then they had these bodies created.
Yes.
Okay. And then,
Yes, that's a good question. They did start out as basically humans. They did look pretty much like us until something happened, and that's just one of those mysteries that might be answered someday, but we're still kind of in the early building phases of that as far as revealing the story to the public. Yes?
What's the official word on what happened to Rain? I don't remember, like, what happened to her after and everything.
So, you want me to take that one?
Yeah, you take that one.
Okay.
Because I remember bits of it, but not the whole story.
So that should eventually be covered by the manga there, but let's see. The official word right now. Should we go into that? Is there an official word right now?
Right
I know
now.
it is spoilers, isn't it?
I remember the marshmallow thing. That's like.
Okay, and that's the thing, like say, like the Captain America or the Iron Man movies are retcon and like retold.
Yeah.
Rain's story is being retold, so most of the stuff is going to be very similar to what was told already, but it is going to be probably changed and tweaked a little bit as the creators kind of come up with new ideas on how to tell the story. As far as the last time we checked kind of story, like what happened is that eventually, as originally she kind of had this whole, I want to unify the peoples together and take all these little tribes and make them into one nation to stand against this, very nasty landscape. But she was born a mutant. She was taller and stronger than most of the other Sergals, and because of mutation, she became more and more insane as time went on. Eventually, she was no longer able to fully lead, and there was a coup about to happen, and she basically stepped down and I don't know if the right word would be surrendered, but she never lost a battle and she wanted to keep that. So she actually surrendered to one of her sons who took over and made the Shigu into a place that wasn't just about war and conquest, but it was actually more of an industrial nation that was much more prosperous. She was arrested and imprisoned. She spent the last of her years basically in almost a vegetative state as her mutation basically took over and made her...
The fluffy.
Yeah, the fluffy.
Huge and white, yeah.
But yeah, that was the main thing that happened to her overall.
That's basically what I. bits and pieces of it.
Yeah, and again, that might change, it might be tweaked, but that's the general story that is probably going to be followed.
Alright.
Any other questions? Check the time right now.
Not really a question, but as of 121, we found out that the panel has been filled to capacity and they stopped letting people in for fire code reasons.
Really?
Yes,
Yes.
there's a lot of people outside right now.
Oh wow.
That's
Apparently Sergals are very popular.
I like your job.
Right there.
Well, there was.
damn.
They started going.
There was about 6 Sergal fursuits out there, as I saw.
Well, the good news is that I am.
Could we have opened the doors?
No, probably
Well,
not.
if you have time to do it twice, everybody can cycle out and you can
Well, what I'm doing is I'm actually recording my screen right now and my voice. So I was planning on actually posting this on YouTube at some point. So for those that didn't make it, I'll probably post about that so they can check it out later. It's very unfortunate that people couldn't come in. I had no idea that I would have a sellout group like this.
Next year, bigger room.
Hopefully, I'll have to request that, but it's one of those you get what you get kind of things.
Yeah.
So
just record how many people showed up this year and be like, yeah.
definitely.
Could be worse, it could be like Who's Line AC where they had 275 people in a room this size.
Yeah, what's up?
You want to talk about the Vilous banner?
Sure. We actually, now, there is a lot of official Vilous stuff that the Vilous team makes and distributes, but
When you say the Vilous team, it's making Kiki, and we're just translating it. I mean, we're not making it, it's making Kiki.
well, yeah.
Yeah.
But there's also, the fans have also gotten together and do a lot of things as well. And there's actually a fan wiki. And what's that, the main purpose of that is anyone that makes their own OC that they want to like share their character or their character story. Some people have put a lot of thought and a lot of story into their character and they want a place to like put that together and share it. So there has been a fan wiki that's been made, it's around for a while. If you just Google Vilous fan wiki, you will find it. It's open to anyone that wants to post about their character. Even if your character isn't fully canon, that's fine. Like you can post it there anyways. So yeah, if you have a character you want to share your story, that's a good place to do it. Sure.
It's more regarding artwork. If an artist himself wants to kind of sell artwork, say at another convention or whatnot, are there any legal things that we need to worry about? Like it is obviously someone else's character. Are there any kind of limits to if things start selling for hundreds or something like that? I have to get in touch with you.
So there's actually a copyright section on our website. It gives a very brief thing over like U.S. copyright law and whatnot. I mean, it's really
It's right here on our main site. So if you want to see what our official
terms
statement
of use.
is, right
That's
here.
it.
Right.
Yeah. So could we just click on that? I guess. Well, we shouldn't really go too much into that here, but
Yeah.
basically, it's stuff you make yourself. If you're just doing commissions and whatnot, I mean, there's nothing that needs to be done about commissions. I mean, people make commissions and stuff all the time. If you want to go into business and stuff, we'd love to work with you. But yeah, that's all there is to it, really.
In a way, I kind of think of it like, say, Pokemon and Nintendo. Like people will make their own Pokemon characters or draw Pokemon art, and that just kind of flies under the radar. So it's kind of a common sense thing. If someone makes a Vilous game, which would be cool, we would hope that they would partner with us because that's a lot bigger of a deal than just doing some art. And there are some people that have made Vilous-inspired games or have modded Sergals into other games. A lot of people have seen the Starbound Sergals have been added to that. And someone did a fantastic job of that, et cetera, et cetera.
It was just a question, like if drawing at one thing to making money of it, it might be another. It's just that one to clear up.
Yeah, and that's a good question, yeah. So if again from here on out, if you want to learn more or get more involved, there are some links on there. Again, there are Telegram groups for people to get involved and chat with each other. There's a lot of people in the community that are artists that do a lot of like fan art for people, and it really is a really cool and heartwarming community, and I absolutely love you guys so much. And I do want to thank all of you for coming here and supporting this. I'm completely thrilled and blown away with how many people showed up to this. So thank you all for coming to this. part of my panel does say that there's a meet and greet that is going to happen, but it cannot be in here because obviously we have people out there that can't be here. So we're actually going to migrate to where the con suite is. Some people actually brought some snacks and stuff, so we're going to migrate to the con suite. So if you want to hang out and chat with people, make your way to the con suite. We're going to have some snacks over there. We're going to hang out. If you have any questions, you can come up here and ask or tear down. Otherwise, I'll see you guys at the con suite.